Okay.
Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Poza is a community partner specialist for the program, and he'll be here with us throughout the series. And here he is right now. John, we have a guest this morning, right?
Well, thanks, Joe. Yes. Well, today we have Dr. Jeffrey Trawick-Smith. And Dr. Trawick-Smith is a professor at the Center for Early Childhood Education at Eastern Connecticut State University. And Dr. Trawick-Smith is known for his national research on children and play, and he is also well known for the annual investigation he does every year researching toys and how developmentally appropriate toys are for children. So welcome, Jeffrey. How are you?
Great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, for most of the people listening would want to know, what is play exactly, and how do we know it when we see it with young children?
Yeah, well, I think we most of us get a sense of what's playing and what's not, but if you, there's kind of a formal definition. Certainly we use that in our research. There are different kinds of play, of course. You can pretend, you can run and scream outdoors, you can build with blocks. But I think what most people use as a definition is any activity that children are able to choose themselves. That is, activity that's purely self-directed, where children get a chance to make choices, to choose who they're going to play with, to choose what kinds of activities they'll engage in. So really, I think what kind of unifies all the different kinds of play is it's totally regulated by children as opposed to adults.
We've all heard the saying that play is a child's work. What exactly is meant by that?
Yeah, well, I think that phrase is used often to kind of argue that, play has really critical components related to thinking, learning, problem solving, things that will serve children well as they get older. I always hesitate a little, though, because I think play and work can be kind of different things as well. I think that children can learn about things deeply in a way that's not playful, but still, meaningful to them. I also think that sometimes we make kind of outrageous claims about what play does for children. Some of the time, children just need to play, whether that leads to something important or not.
That's refreshing to hear. That's refreshing to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because as kids, I mean, our purpose wasn't to learn. It was just to have a good time and maybe let off some steam. So that's refreshing.
Yeah, well, and one of the definitions of play is something that doesn't really have as its main focus some kind of goal or outcome, but rather pure process, And those things, I think, really are important for children.
And that's the question, do children today have enough time to play these days? And what are some of the more modern threats to the time that they can play?
Yeah, well, there's a real concern about whether children are able to play enough. My strong belief is it's so critically important for kids, and there's certain threats out there, as you say. I think even things as simple as, neighborhoods that aren't as safe as they used to be. I'm not sure parents feel as comfortable just sending their kids to the park or outdoors to play in the neighborhood like I did when I was growing up. There are, competition from television and computer games and other kind of screen-related activities. I think children can play on a computer, but I think there are a lot of things that they do that really aren't as playful as going out and running and climbing or pretending with your peers. So there's that. And then the thing that I'm most concerned about, and it's something I kind of, tried to talk about a lot, is just the disappearance of play in school and for younger and younger kids. When I go into kindergartens now, I'm kind of startled at how unplayful they can be. Sometimes they don't have blocks or pretend play equipment or art centers. I mean, they get to be kind of serious academic places. So, that to me is a major concern. Kids need to play in school. That's an important part of the school day.
I saw a story on the news yesterday, and I knew this was happening. Maybe not in this magnitude, but many schools across the country, I guess mostly middle schools, are eliminating recess because I guess they need to teach to the test, and that 20 minutes or so just is going to be used, they feel, better used by teaching to the test primarily. I know a lot of the parents in the audience of the news clip that I saw were concerned about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think
recess?
That's kind of a misguided step if you're trying to improve, learning in school. There's been some kind of great research about this, that even 20 minutes of playing outdoors really sharpens attention, and children actually learn more after they return into the classroom and engage in another learning activity. Whereas by depriving them of recess, children become more and more inattentive, more wiggly, and there are more conduct problems that come up. And really, you have to ask, is it really meaningful learning time by the end of a school day? So, I always argue that, actually getting outdoors and playing, and especially outdoors, I mean, there's some kind of neat studies that suggest getting them out, even, in somewhat bad weather, will really contribute. When they come back in, they're more attentive, they're more, engaged in activities and learning activities. So, actually, I think, and I'm not, well, I better not say, there was a state some years ago that actually kind of outlawed the entire state recess as a kind of a waste of instructional time, and achievement scores went down. I mean, it really isn't. It's kind of self-defeating to try and cram in more instructional time at the expense of being able to play.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, we're going to go to a couple of questions that we have from our listeners, and I think our first question has something to do with toys, and here we go.
Yeah, great.
Hi, Dr. Smith. This is Lisa. I was wondering what the most developmentally appropriate toys are for children for the 5 to 6 month age group.
Did you hear the question?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. 5 to 6 months. Okay, first of all, I need to confess, I'm very interested in children's play at all levels. Most of our research has been on preschool-age children, but we have thought pretty deeply about, even play for infants. And it's a kind of a complex question. Let me say just simply, I think that toys that babies, infants, can act upon to make things happen are ideal toys for that age group. One thing that's happening at that age is children are very gradually learning causality, that is, cause and effect. I can make an action and something will happen. And so, toys where things jingle, where you squeeze a toy and it makes a noise, where you rattle a stuffed animal and it, makes a sound, where you can actually act on toys and things happen, I think is ideal. I could go on this. There are all sorts of other kinds of things, but the idea of causality toys, I think, is really important at that age.
Okay, now we have another question, and this can be somewhat interesting and a little controversial. So let's see what this listener. Okay.
Hi, Dr. Smith. This is Jackie. My question is for grandparents. Can you suggest a good play activity for children who are with their grandparents while their parents are working?
Okay. Well, first, can I comment? Grandparents are really important. I'm just going to say that. There is
Absolutely.
lots of research to indicate that they really play a powerful role in their kids' lives. So I'm so glad to hear that a grandparent is wondering about this. I didn't get the age group, so it's going to be a little hard to respond. Maybe what I'll do is just imagine that the child is maybe between 2 and 5, and if that's the case, I have several things I would recommend. One is to engage the child or children in make-believe and pretend play. Even if it's just providing simple props from the kitchen to pretend to cook a meal, maybe to set up a pretend train in your backyard, to engage in that kind of pretend role-playing is really useful for kids, and it's also really a nice way to connect with children. Another, one of the things I always recommend is different kinds of building toys. Now, some of these are a little pricey, but a good set of hardwood blocks is just wonderful in terms of intellectual development, social development, and again, it's a nice way to connect with children. So those are just a couple of things that I think of right off.
Okay, well, that'll lead me to asking you. I know that you conduct an annual investigation of toys called Timpani at your Center for Early Childhood Education.
Right.
And what are some of your main findings about toys over the 6 years that you've studied them?
Well, we've been doing this every year, and it's a complicated study. It's real science. So, but we always do identify a toy or two each year that actually score the highest on an instrument that we use. As we observe children using toys, it seems what's emerging is that real basic and non-realistic toys seem to score highest in terms of their benefits for children. Just to name a few, Tinker Toys, Legos, different kinds of building toys that don't necessarily suggest any one play activity, but can be used in multiple ways. This last time around, we found even an easel and paint scored very, very high, kind of open-ended kind of material that can be used in multiple ways. And so we've started to kind of conclude that really, although there's so many toys on the market that are realistic, that are battery-operated, that do all the play for children, that really what seems to work best are those where children can really use their imaginations, use them in multiple ways, things like blocks, Legos are just ideal for that.
Well, you're talking about the attributes, the positives of some toys. Toys periodically make the news in a negative or controversial way.
Sure,
and I'm thinking in particular toy military weapons, toy war figures and vehicles. They're criticized as teaching young boys to be overly aggressive. And then on the other hand, there's criticism of giving little girls dolls to play with while boys play with trucks. And that's seen as reinforcing gender stereotypes. Is this all just PC? Is it overblown? Or what are your thoughts on this, having researched toys and children?
Yeah. Well, let me comment on two things you said. The first has to do with, kind of war play. There's a wonderful author in our field who argues that, children are going to play guns in war as long as that exists in our society. And there's, it's just going to happen. Children play out what they see on television, what they worry about. And so, we're going to see that. Not that you would go out and engage children in that kind of play. I think that, it's kind of important to guide them toward more, kind of positive play. But I do think that's going to be very, very common. In terms of gender, I do believe that boys and girls play differently. They do play differently. We found that in our toy study, really in almost any study. They have different play preferences that could be influenced, probably are, by parents and by peers and by television. So you are going to see girls, in some cases, being drawn to dolls more than boys, perhaps. Boys being drawn to some, toy vehicles. One thing that we have found, though, in our studies is that if girls have the opportunity and are encouraged to play with blocks, with trucks with stereotypically kind of male toys. They engage in very high quality play that's very useful. And boys, if they are encouraged to use tea sets and dolls, and also will engage in this kind of really high-quality play. So I think the idea is, I think part of it is, providing really high-quality toys, and then encouraging children to play with all different kinds, and to kind of almost explicitly let girls and boys know it's okay to play with these things. Could I just come back to, though, some of those basic toys that have no special purpose? I always bring up blocks again, or Legos, or Lincoln Logs, or some of those. Those appeal to both boys and girls, we found, and further, promote the play of both genders. So there are some toys that I think are just kind of gender neutral that are also nice to provide.
Right. Now, how well do children with special needs play? Is play as valuable for children with, say, autism, Down syndrome, or motor impairment as it is for typically developing children?
Right. I would actually say even more so, but just because play is such a wonderful context for identifying children who have special needs, pinpointing specific difficulties that kids are having. So I think if you're working in a classroom where you are, you have included children with special needs, or, might, or if you have a child of your own who you have some concern about, providing kind of a rich play environment is really, really important. In classrooms, what may be most important about play for children, say, with autism or other, disabilities, depending on the severity, is the social aspect. Children are better accepted by their peers when they can engage with them in play activities. And so I think social and emotional things are most critical for kids who have a variety of different disabilities.
You mentioned a classroom. What kinds of insights can a professional, a teacher, or I guess even for that matter, a parent gain by observing a child at play, whether in the classroom or at home?
Yeah, I always tell my students, we prepare teachers of young children. I always say play is the very best window you have to development. You can see so much just by carefully observing what kids are doing. So I think one of the most important reasons to include play, both at home and in school, is to be able to see all the things that it reveals about the child's development. I always come back to social and emotional areas. I think that there are so many, kind of early problems that might arise, whether it be a neurological difficulty or even social, that can be identified just by watching children interact with their peers and play. Are they aggressive? Are they withdrawn? Are they able to kind of enter a play group in an effective way? So there's that. But also cognitive things, intellectual things. You can hear children's language. You can kind of observe their thinking, problem solving. We've been doing a few studies recently where we're looking at how you can see mathematical thinking in block play. So there are just tons of ways you can kind of discover things about children, probably more even than a sit down and take this test kind of assessment. So it really is a valuable, I think play watching is a really valuable way to kind of see where children are developmentally.
Yeah, I know that Joe touched on this earlier, but in reality, we hear so much again about Common Core state standards and testing in schools, but truly, can play coexist in classrooms with all of the accountability and assessment frenzy that's going on? And, we've heard about, Joe mentioned about recess being eliminated, or you mentioned, how do we do this? How do we make schools make sure that it is part of their normal day?
Yeah, this really worries me. I've kind of commented that, I find schools, particularly as kids get into the elementary years, are getting less and less playful. There's less kind of child-centered, child-directed play, choice for children in terms of their activities, it really kind of concerns me. And I think some of this is due to kind of misunderstanding of, how children learn. I think that it's a misapplication of knowledge of child development to think that to meet standards, like Common Core standards, you should always have children sitting and being directed or taught directly by a teacher. And I think that there's a growing body of research to show that a balance of, kind of teacher-guided activity with, play is really best, and I'm talking about for scoring well on those, kind of assessments. For example, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but we're starting to find, we're on our fourth study where we've shown that children's block play, pretend play, and other kinds of play are directly related to children's performance in mathematics as they get older. And so the idea here is that some of those standards can be met in more playful settings, and then you get all the other benefits too. So, I do think it's going to take some education, some advocacy, because I think, right now play is underappreciated. Seems like something that's kind of frivolous but doesn't contribute. And I really do believe that it will contribute to children's learning.
You referred earlier to today's environment for children at home, where maybe neighborhoods aren't as safe as they were when we were kids, and parents are concerned about letting their children out, in the backyard or going down to the playground. And this has led to something that was unheard of when I was little, and probably when you other two fellas were small, and that was the play date. This is so common now. Is there a difference in the quality of play and whatever learning is derived from it between structured or set up play, like we're going to have a play date, you're going to go and play with little Timmy, or just spontaneous play where children kind of do it themselves? Is there a difference in quality?
Yeah, I think, what I think is sad about modern life is what's missing is the run and play in the neighborhood with kids that are older, younger. You have to try and convince people to play with you. All of those things are really valuable. So, I do think that this kind of, sometimes they call it open field play. It's where you just go out and you interact with whoever you want. Sometimes you have to deal with being rejected by your, the neighbor kids or whatever. All of that is really beneficial, and you don't see that as much. Whether it's, I mentioned an unsafe neighborhood, but I also think just kids are so structured. They have after-school programs, they have other things that just kind of tie up their time, and so I think that has great benefits. I will say that play dates can be very valuable for kids, particularly there's been some kind of interesting research on children with special needs. For example, children with mild autism, sometimes they do better if there's one other really kind of positive playmate. So I do think that there are times when, kind of having a more structured play date at home is useful for kids. And by the way, I'll just mention, I think it's a very nice thing for teachers to take some time to kind of recommend children in a classroom that might be good play dates for families, because sometimes you just don't know, what the good match will be. So I kind of see both of those as having a benefit, but I do kind of mourn the end of, this kind of more, I guess I'm sort of dating myself, but we used to just kind of roam the neighborhood, and all the families watched out for each other's kids,
Right,
It was just kind of a very free time that, isn't quite there anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, Jeff, that our time has really gone quickly. Fascinating stuff, fascinating conversation. I just wanted to thank you so much for being on our program, and keep up all of the great work that you're doing in terms of research on play. This is very, very vital for our young ones.
And now we should all go out and play.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I always love, you can tell, probably too much. I just love talking about this. So I really appreciate your having me on.
Thank you very much. And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. If you have any questions, please email them to questions@nwirk.org. For John Posa and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.
Okay.